so we're going to check out a couple of interesting relationships between points, lines, and planes today. The first such relationship is intersecting lines. So what do intersecting lines produce? Well, let's check it out. Let's say I have a line over here. I'm going to call this line L. And let's say I have another line over here. And let's say I call this line M. Notice how these two lines hit each other. Do you see where they hit each other? They hit each other right at this point. Let's call that point P. So we say that line L intersects line M at point P. So that's all intersecting means. That just means hitting each other, right? So if I say line L intersects line M, I'm just saying line L hits line M, right? It crosses line M. Let's say we have two planes. You can also have planes intersecting each other. So here's one plane. I can call it plane P. Okay, pretty generic, I know. And let's say I have another plane up here. So here's my second plane. So don't worry, it's not an actual plane, but comes close to it. Okay, so there's my second plane, and I'm going to give it a name. It's not going to be nameless for long. So let's say this is plane M. So notice where these two planes hit each other. They meet each other at this line, right? And I can call this line L. So you can say plane P meets plane M at line L. You can also say plane P intersects plane M at line L. Or plane P crosses line M, or plane P crosses plane M at line L. So these are all valid ways of saying the same thing. Basically, that these two planes hit each other and make a line. Now that we talked about intersecting lines and planes, let's talk about parallel lines and planes. So scrolling all the way down, let's now talk about parallel lines and planes. So what do I mean by parallel? Well, let's say I've got some lines up here. So let me switch. Okay. So let's say I've got this line. I'll call this line P. And let's say I have another line. Here's my second line. I'll call it line Q. So notice that these two lines never hit each other. They're going in the same direction. So we can say that line P, okay, you can say that line P is parallel, that's the symbol, to line Q. Okay, make sure you put the line symbols and everything like that. In fact, let me do that right now. Let's say I have some points here so I can reference this line. I'll name this point A, this one B. I'll name this point C and this point D. And I'm going to go ahead and reference these guys up here. So let me write that down. So line CD, put the line symbol on top, is parallel. Here's the parallel symbol to line AB. So here's line AB, and so these two lines are parallel. Now if you still don't know what that means, you can think of there being two cars. So here's a car on line CD, and here's a green car on line AB. Question is, will these two cars ever hit each other? No, because these cars are going in the same direction, they're never hitting each other, and they're parallel. So that's what parallel means. You can think of parallel lines being lines where two cars drive and they'll never hit each other. That's it. So that's what parallel is all about. You can even have parallel planes. So here's a plane. I'll call it plane M. And let me draw a blue plane. Here's a blue plane. And I'll call that plane N. Now notice how these two planes are parallel, right? They're basically going in the same direction. So you can say that plane M is parallel, put the parallel symbol, to plane N. So these two planes are parallel, just like these two lines are parallel. Now let's talk about what perpendicular means. Perpendicular is like everybody's favorite word when you grow up. Just kidding, that's a lie. So perpendicular. So perpendicular lines, what does that mean? So here's one line. I can call this line L. And here's another line. I can call this line M. Now, these lines hit each other in such a nice way, people made up a word for it. A right angle. See how these two lines cross each other? It's almost like a perfect crossing. So they cross each other at a right angle. So you say that line L is perpendicular to line M because they hit each other at a right angle. And of course, a right angle, remember, is 90 degrees from our study of angles. So how can you write that in the language of geometry? You say that line L, let's put some points here so I can talk about line L. Let's call this point A, let's call this point B, let's call this one point C, and this one point D. Well, now I can talk about how they're perpendicular. Okay, so I can write that line CD, which is this one, is perpendicular, and watch out for the symbol, here it is perpendicular to line AB. So that's all perpendicular means. It means that two lines hit each other at a right angle. You can also have two planes be perpendicular. Here's a plane and here's another plane, okay? And notice how these two planes are perpendicular to each other. Do you see how they're perpendicular? Well, even though my drawing is pretty not good, you can see that these two planes hit each other at a right angle. Here's my right angle. And so because they hit each other at a right angle, plane P is perpendicular to plane Q, So that's how you can express the language of perpendicularity. Okay? So we talked about intersecting, we talked about parallel, we talked about perpendicular. Next up is something called skew. Now this one is pretty wacky, so don't get too afraid of it. What does skew mean? Well, I'll show you. When you have two line segments that are skew, well, let's say you have a box. Okay, here's my box. And let's say I make up a game. Find two lines on this box that will never hit each other even though they're not parallel. Okay, well, you might come up with a few examples. Okay, you might say, hey, what about this line and this line? Well, no, they hit each other over here, right? So that doesn't work. How about this line and this line? Nope, they hit each other over here. How about this line and this line? Well, they hit each other over here, right? So all of these lines cross each other. How about this line segment and this line segment? Well, they're parallel, so I don't want parallel lines. I want skew lines. So that's how this might look. Here's a green line segment, and here's a blue line segment, and yet you'll notice they never cross each other, right? If I continue these lines, you'll see they'll never hit each other. They'll never intersect. Okay? Even though it looks like they hit each other over here, this is in 3D. Okay? So if you actually rotate it, they never touch each other. So because they never touch each other, and they're not parallel, and they're not coplanar, you can say that these two lines are skew. So that's what we mean by skew. And we don't have a symbol for skew. You just have to, say it in words, unfortunately. So we got parallel, perpendicular, skew. What's up next? Well, we got collinear. Now, what does collinear mean? Well, I don't know if you ever heard of this, but the word co usually means share, right? Co-payment or co-ride, right? If you want to share a ride with someone. So collinear is all about sharing. So if you've got 3 points that are sharing a line, well, they're collinear. So let's say I have 3 points A, B, and C, and you can draw a line between them. Well, now you can say point A, B, and C are collinear. But if I go ahead and actually move point B off the line, well, now notice that points A, B, and C are no longer collinear, okay? Because you can't draw a line between them. Don't believe me? Well, let's try to do it. Try to draw a line between A, B, and C. Well, you can try your best. Okay, I got a line, but boom, I got to hit C. It doesn't work. This is not a line. So that's why these 3 points are non-collinear. Okay, these 3 points are non-collinear. On the other hand, if you have 3 points like this, all lined up, ready to be Avengers Assemble, ready to have a line drawn between them, well, now these 3 are collinear. So that's what collinear means. It just means 3 points or 3 or more points that are on the same line. Now let's talk about the next word, and that's coplanar. Now you might think, okay, collinear means some stuff sharing the same line. Coplanar must mean some stuff sharing the same plane. And yes, that's exactly what it means. So let's say I got some points up here. Let's say here's a point A, and here's another point B, and here's another point C. Well, I can say that these 3 points are coplanar. I can draw a plane that contains these 3 points. You can also have coplanar lines, right? If I have this line, let's call it line M, and I have another line, let's call it line P. Okay, well, I can draw a plane that contains both of these lines, right? So these 2 lines are collinear. Even if I have something like this, if I go ahead and select this second thingamajigger, and if I rotate this line, boom, these 2 lines are still collinear, right? These 2 lines are still coplanar. Okay. Oh wow, that's a hot mess. Okay. Even if I have something like this, right? So line M and line P, well, this is still coplanar, right? I can draw a plane that contains both of these lines. So that's what coplanar means. It means points or lines that share the same plane. Collinear means points that share the same line. We also talked about intersecting lines and intersecting planes. 2 intersecting lines make a point. 2 intersecting planes make a line. We talked about parallel lines and how they never touch each other. They always head in the same direction. Their parallel lines, by the way, are coplanar. Okay, they're coplanar. They lie on the same plane. Perpendicular lines, well, they hit each other at a 90-degree angle. That's what's so magical about them. Okay, and perpendicular lines, they're also coplanar. You can also have perpendicular planes like over here. And finally, we talked about skew lines. And by the way, skew lines, they are not, N-O-T, not coplanar. Not coplanar, okay? So don't forget about that. So skew lines are not coplanar, okay? They never touch each other, even though they're not parallel. And finally, we talked about collinearity and coplanar points and lines. So thanks for watching this flipped classroom video. Hopefully it helped you out.